Sagamore Farm came into the family through my great-grandfather. He bought it for his daughter, Margaret Emerson, and she gave it to Dad on his 21st birthday. It was a pretty nice birthday present for a young 21-year-old guy.
Unlike his grandfather, Cornelius Vanderbilt, who made his fortune in shipping and railroads, Alfred G. Vanderbilt II sought to make his mark at the racetrack.
My father loved everything about horse racing, and he always said that it was like the kid who went to the circus to see the elephants, but discovered what he loved was the whole circus. He loved the people coming, he loved the personalities at the racetrack, he loved the backstretch crowd, he loved going to the workouts in the morning. He somehow managed to enjoy the races themselves as well, and it was just everything about it that he loved.
Nearly 1,000 acres at its peak, the farm included a 3/4-mile training track. Also available was a 1/4-mile indoor training facility with stalls for 90 horses. Sagamore Farm was home to hundreds of exercise riders, grooms, and assistants for over half a century.
In my father's life, and I think this was true for the other gentlemen of the era, farms like this were their sport. The goal was to breed champions and win races. The money part of it was absolutely secondary. I mean, everyone wanted their farm to run as economically as possible. If at all possible, they wanted to make money with it, but it wasn't the purpose of the farm. And that's a very different thing from today. But it created at Sagamore an incredibly special environment. It was a special place to the people who worked there and the people who lived there. It was home to them. My father bred Native Dancer at Sagamore. Native Dancer was a big, good-looking gray horse. He was absolutely wonderful to look at. He was athletic. And when he ran, there was something just beautiful about the way his stride increased. He liked to run from the back of the pack. He was kind of a lazy horse, and loved to nip the other horse at the wire. He was just a devastating come-from-behind horse. Native Dancer won every race he ran in except for one. That's 21 out of 22 races. In 1952, Native Dancer won 9 out of 9 races. In 1953, he won every race except the Kentucky Derby. And he would have won that by a jump if he hadn't been bumped twice in it.
Native Dancer is catching him. Dark Star holds on and is whipped under the wire to win by a head over Native Dancer.
Then won all the rest of his starts until he retired in 1954 as one of the greatest racehorses of all time. So he was big, he was good looking, he was the boss in every race he was ever in, and he was the boss in the barn too. They called him the boss. Native Dancer's popularity among the public was equal to that of Secretariat or any horse that people can now remember in the modern era. There was merchandise, there was Native Dancer figurines, there were Native Dancer toys, scarves, neckties. The public loved to watch for him. And you could see him on television in the 50s. You could watch for him easily because he had a white face. He was a dapple gray, so the coat shimmered on the television screen. And the jockey with the white cap above, and it made it very easy to pick him out. I remember coming to the farm as a small child and seeing those beautiful fences. Actually, the first thing that I remember are the fences, the white fences everywhere, and the white barns and the red roofs, and the horses out in the paddocks. It was a beautiful place, beautiful and magical, and somehow it was a lyrical experience to go there. During its heyday, the farm was bustling with activity, and I remember more than anything else seeing them prepare to ship to the West Coast. That was truly like watching Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, getting ready to go out of town. All of the rail cars would pull up, and you'd have the trainers and the assistant trainers and the grooms and the hot walkers and everybody out there getting 100, 120 horses onto a train to go to California for the racing season out there. And that was something to see. I think my last concrete memory of Sagamore is sitting on Native Dancer's back when he was still alive. And I'll just never forget that, sitting on that big, broad, white back. He was snow white by then, an old fellow, distinguished. It was a wonderful memory. I remember the day Native Dancer died because it was in the newspapers and it was on radio. My father was not a particularly sentimental man, but he was very sad. He was very saddened by it, and I could hear it in his voice. Native Dancer was, that was the top for him. You know, he had climbed the big mountain with that and had a great time, and it was hard to hear that it was over. My dad sold Sagamore in 1986. The era of the 80s had not been kind to racing operations like my father. That era was where a lot of horses were syndicated, and he just wasn't comfortable with that. He didn't feel that was necessarily the right way for racing to go. And I think he felt maybe that his time was passing. It went through, I think, some bad times after he left. It went through, I think, a couple of ownerships and began to deteriorate. My father's last day on earth was a fairly typical day for him. He got up early in the morning, raced to the track for the early morning workouts, came back, changed his clothes, and died. And for a man who was as dedicated to the sport as he was, that's a pretty good way to go.
In 2007, Maryland native Kevin Plank, founder and CEO of the Under Armour apparel company, purchased Sagamore Farm and set out to rebuild and restore the hallowed facility.
It was in rough shape. Fencing was falling down and needed to be repaired, and the buildings were needed to be renovated. The place needed cleaning up, that's for sure. There's 530 acres. There was 150 acres that was in corn. We've turned that back into pasture for horses, and so we have plenty of land, plenty of stalls, and we'll try and fill them a little bit at a time. But in terms of our stable, we'd like to start building our broodmare band, and we want to race on the Saturday afternoons, the big races. We know it's a tough game, and we respect the game and respect the people in it, and we want to do it the right way. So it'll take some time. It's not going to be an overnight story.
Seeing Sagamore restored, I think, would mean everything to me and to the rest of the family. There's so much history, there's so much family history tied up in that beautiful place. It should be a professional place. It doesn't need to be a museum, but he seems to have a respect for the old while also bringing in the new. So I think it's going to be wonderful, and I'm all for it.
The senior Vanderbilt success at Sagamore Farm was built around a motto that may inspire its new owners in the future.
Breed the best to the best and hope for the best.